Well, it is 5:30. Welcome, everyone. And we are here in the boardroom on Legacy Campus, and it is Thursday, the 4th of November. Oh, is it the 4th of November?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. The 4th of November, and we will have roll call.
Larry Jepson, board member.
Randall Bagley, board member.
Roger Pulse board member.
Terry Rhodes, board member.
Kathy Christiansen, board member.
Jeff Nielsen, board member.
Jared Black, business administrator.
And Steve Norton, superintendent, and Chris Corcoran, board member, are excused this evening. Roger Pulsifer will lead us in the pledge and the mission statement. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world.
Thank you, Roger. And Jared is checking. Since we have no public here, there's not likely any public input, and there is none. We'll move on to our reports agenda, and we have Assistant Principal Deanna Stallings here from Ridgeline to present the Student Conlang Club.
Your guess is as good as mine. So this student came and asked to start a Conlang Club. I had to ask him what that was, and even after he left, I did some research because I still did not know what it was. Conlang is short for constructed language, kind of like cosplay. What does cosplay stand for? Costume play. Yeah, so cosplay. So it's in the science fiction fantasy world where an author constructs a language, a full-fledged language with syntax and rules and all of that for their works. Probably the most famous is Elfin from Lord of the Rings, and then Klingon from the Star Trek series. These are full languages. I was telling Mike that there are some colleges where you can take a Klingon class and learn Klingon. So the group will get together and they will look at these constructed languages in science fiction and fantasy, talk about it. That's about all I know.
So it makes sense that they really don't have any budget or funding because they're just getting together.
They're a group of kids with something in common that they're going to get together and talk about this. So.
Anybody have any questions for Diana?
Oh, I'd
Deanna.
like to see the language when they get done.
Yeah.
Some of these finance meetings I go to, they speak Conlang into them, I think. So.
I bet, yes. When I go observe math classes, it's Conlang to me. So.
All right, thank you, Deanna.
Okay, I'll let them know you approved their club. Okay. Or something else have to happen?
Yeah, you have to come back.
It'll come back next in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Then let me know on that.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Green Canyon new student clubs, a whole slew of them.
They have several of them. They should have a representative here because I really can't answer for their clubs. So if there's questions you want me to take back to them and have them prepared to respond next time, or I can actually pull the item and put it on the agenda again. Whatever the board.
I thought Twilight was out. I didn't know that was still a big deal.
I think it's mostly to mock Twilight. Kind of reading it, it says the purpose is to bond with people who share the same interest in the awful Twilight movies.
Yeah, that's what
right?
that's what I thought too.
So I think they watch them and just kind of snicker.
Watch as many. The goal is to watch as many Twilight movies as possible.
Yeah, isn't that something? Mm-hmm. Kind of like the Conlang Club or something.
Yeah, so you don't need budget for that. Wow. Okay. Well, anybody have any questions for Mike that he can't answer?
No.
What's
No.
your favorite Twilight movie?
You know, what I remember is Twilight Zone. I don't remember a Twilight movie.
Hey, that's on at 11:30 at night on, what's the station? It's one of the main stations, supporting station. Just passing it on in case you want to catch
Yeah.
it. So
On
Well, I'll-
PBS?
it's not PBS.
Oh.
It's on our. It's channel 376.
Oh, wow.
I think it's this channel or something.
So, Mike, one question I had on the Green Club. They want to start a recycling center at the school and a compost pile at the school. Maybe I'd have a couple of questions about that.
Okay, I'll have them here at the next meeting, so before you approve, you can ask them, and I'll tell them specifically the Green Waste, the Green Club
Okay.
on that one.
That was the only question I had on this club. So,
I don't have any questions.
I know those compost piles can sometimes have quite an odor.
well, that and just, I mean, the schools look great, and I'm just wondering what that looks like. Just curious.
Yeah.
Most of them you see is kind of messy.
That's the only concern I've got is
Yeah.
what that's going to be like. So.
So I guess I just wonder if that means that the club members will be doing the cleanup on that. I don't know. Mr. McMurdo is the advisor. He's and he's a very
Eco-friendly guy.
eco-friendly guy, but he's also he would make sure that they would take good care of things, I would think.
Yeah, just question. So.
Okay, I'll make sure they're ready to address that one
Okay.
with you.
Yeah, where will they put it? Okay.
They have a big ag shop area, and some areas back there behind the school, and maybe that's what they're thinking, but I don't know.
Then you would think they would include one of the ag teachers. Interesting.
You would
Okay.
think,
All right.
but they are not there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'll have them back here.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you. Moving on is board member reports. Oh, Kathy wanted to say something about that.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something about it. Okay, I'll say something about it. It seems like we don't always get a report from all of the committee meetings, and maybe that's because we don't need one. But my suggestion was just that if you do attend a meeting somewhere, just bring a report to us so we have a little update of what's going on, just so we stay in the loop.
Yeah, one that'll happen. This next one is the calendar for the year. I can't remember, Mike. When is your goal to present that?
We're going to present the first meeting
In December. That's right. Okay, so that'll be coming up.
How often do you have to attend UHSAA meetings?
It'll be on the 18th this month.
So right after.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just think it's good for us all to stay informed about everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, I will report for Chris because he called me when he was leaving town to report that they held their third meeting with principals and included students this time to discuss graduation with the key people at USU for graduation. And he expressed a little bit of frustration that this is their third meeting and several of the high schools have sent a different person every time. So he feels like it's sort of time wasting because they have to review the same issues every single time. And for Chris, I'm sure that's sort of frustrating since he's very short on time too. But one of the things that the principals were most concerned about was costs. And Mike, maybe you can explain that to us about graduation. The costs for graduation does each school pay their own when it's at USU, or does the district pay for everything?
This time, the schools pay all the costs for graduation ceremonies.
Okay.
They always have.
Okay. Because one thing that Chris suggested was that maybe as the district should pull in the money that would normally go to the schools for that, and the district take care of all the payments. Because how did he put it? He felt like the principals were sort of nickel and diming everything were the words he used, and which is understandable. They're concerned about the budget, but he felt like maybe if the district paid all those fees and took that responsibility from the principals, that it would facilitate not only better discussions in the meetings, focusing on graduation and not the costs of them, but focusing on the graduation, because he felt like the students didn't get, in this last meeting, the students didn't get a lot of time for input because the principals were so concerned about this cost or that cost or this cost, and reviewing all the things that they had talked about in previous meetings because they had new people there.
So is the cost for USU substantially more than what they were spending over these last couple of years?
No. And Chris said as he has been checking on costs at USU, that USU actually was giving, has been giving the schools substantial discount over other groups who use their facilities. The one, for instance, that he gave me was parking. He said normally if a outside group comes in to use the Spectrum, then there's a $3,000 parking fee to use the USU facilities. And he said that USU has been charging each of the schools $250 for parking. And so things like that he's discovered as he has gone through this process. But he also felt like he reported that he feels like pulling the principals together into a sort of committee meeting for graduation is requiring them to kind of be similar, and not nobody could go rogue, so to speak, as with their graduation activities or things like that. So anyway, that's Chris's report to me. And he also requested that we, as a board, make an official vote on graduation. I mean, we've talked about it lots of times, and Mike said we didn't have to vote on it, but Chris would like us to put that on the action agenda for the next meeting, if you're all agreeable for that, to kind of solidify it that we are going to USU for graduation at the end of this school year. And so everyone knows, because he said several of the principals mentioned that the decision hadn't been made by the board yet.
Okay, so the perception of the students and the principals is that we're not certain that we're doing that yet, correct? Okay.
Right. So Chris just requested that we put it on as an action agenda item on our next board meeting and take an official vote so that he could report to that committee that, yes, this is what the plan is, this is how we're moving forward, so let's get on with the planning.
So, Mike, do you know this? Do the high schools each pay the same for their graduation, or are all of them different?
Tim come up here and follow me because he went to the meeting yesterday, give you a little bit of insight as well. But they all have the same fee. Now, if they add, the only difference I'm aware of is the Jumbotron, if they use that. But the superintendent the last few years has offered district will pay for the Jumbotron if you want to use the Jumbotron. That's the only thing that I'm aware of that's different. And I think I'm going to, just a thought on, I think it's probably good right now to have board action, because I think the principals have been led to say, let's discover this a little bit with Utah State and see if this is the road we want to go down. And so it's been kind of left open. Mm-hmm. So I think if the board takes an action and says, this is what we will do, because it's now been, visits have been made and some conversations, probably need to lock it in.
Okay.
Yeah. Tim, you want to tell them about the meeting yesterday?
I had a little different impression. First of all, Chris did a fantastic job. He asked if he could start with a preamble and reviewed kind of where things were, what the discussion had been at the board the last time. There was only one different principal there. That's Mike Monson sent his assistant because he couldn't be there. So the rest were all the same principals that we met with Chris on a Zoom call a few weeks ago.
Chris said that Dave Swenson was there for the first time, that he hadn't been there before.
Yeah, I thought he was on the call. He was here when you had your board discussion that evening, but anyway, he did a fantastic job kind of laying out the board decisions of being tied to weather or space and why we were looking at USU. I think the principals were just under the impression that he was facilitating a meeting with USU so that they could see if they could come up with a workable solution, because they haven't been completely happy with that. So I think in their mind, the purpose of the meeting yesterday was to look at costs and some of these other things and decide, are you guys willing to work with us, and do you want us here? And so I think the principals think that's what Chris's role was, to facilitate that meeting with the university as a discover point yesterday. The students were there, so they were all new. And part of the reason he did his explanation and he addressed them specifically is so they would know everything that's happened leading up to, so that they could be informed on the discussion. Students didn't have a lot of input. None of them have participated in a graduation, and so they were asking questions like, what do you do at a graduation? And how do these things work? And so I think when we left, my feeling was we just got to get together, very much like you said, and get the high schools together, come up with some things that they can have in similar, so that they don't have to reshuffle the floor and incur the costs of some of those things being moved around when they are there. They did a very good job explaining to the principals things that are under the control of the spectrum, things that aren't under control of the spectrum. They're required by some state law that they have to have their own ushers who are trained in what do they call it, homeland security type issues, active shooter type issues. And so that's why schools have to incur the costs of ushers and that kind of thing. I got the feeling Chris wants to get to the creative stage of actually planning graduation and not worry about the money. Let's plan what we want, and then there'll be ways we can find on how to fund this, but let's have it be a good experience, take the best of what we learned during COVID of personalizing graduation for the students, and combine those two together and see if we can have a good experience at the Spectrum this coming year. So
generally speaking, how do the principals feel about it?
I took a couple of them home, back to their schools, and they were very open. Dave says, I just want them, let's march forward and get going. So, yeah.
How do you feel about Chris's idea of having the total bill for all the schools come to the district and not to the schools? Would be fine with that. It's a little different just because they collect the fees. It's not typically how it happens. Fees are collected at the school for graduation from the students.
They're tracked in the school's financial system that they have, and it would just be another step to take on that charge. It's not an entirely bad thing that the schools have to be cognizant of what they have to spend, because you could run up the costs pretty quickly on and I think they learned that over the last 2 years, in the fact that they now had the responsibility to hire someone to do the staging and figure out how to get light and sound and the yard signs that they did, and they found out that I think that it was actually more expensive to run their own graduations at the school than what they'd been paying at the Spectrum. So, but costs have gone up. It will probably be more expensive now. Labor costs have gone up. We all know that inflation has been difficult over the last 2 years, so that'll have some impact on our costs.
So do you have any suggestions if we take, so we'll take board action on this on our next meeting. Do you feel like this is going in a good direction?
Yes, I talked to the principals when I took them home. I said the two things the board are concerned about is when we come out of COVID, and Chris did a very good job explaining these, is that everyone who wants to participate in a graduation can do that, and that's not always guaranteed at a school site. And two, that we are not held by the weather. I mean, it's all great when we have a nice graduation in May and June and we can hold it outside, but the minute it rains or storms during that event, it's going to make it very difficult. So, and they were fine with that. They're fine with moving ahead with USU.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So they don't feel like we're being heavy-handed by pushing the USU venue.
No, I don't think so. I think they're open to the idea of going back there and seeing what they can do. Dave said on his way out, he said, in a lot of ways, this simplifies things for us because it's a lot of work to pull these off on our own, in our own venue. So there's pros and cons to both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Terry, do we still have placeholders there then for the schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike scheduled the 31st and 1st.
Already.
Okay.
Yeah, they just got to decide their times a little bit better, and that will depend a little bit on how they set up their practices and how they do pictures before and after and that type of thing, how much of a spread they want.
So they didn't talk about that yesterday?
They did a little bit.
Okay.
Mm-hmm, yeah, they talked about that. They just didn't solidify it because what they need to do is come up with a plan. So the very next step, you nailed it, is just get us all four together and say, and I suggested that's before we left, we just get together and just decide how do we want the stage set up, the chairs set up, so we have, it doesn't mean everyone has to be completely cookie cutter and do it exactly the same, but if we do it enough the same that we save the costs from changing everything up each time, that will be good. So.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
I think the schools have plenty in their account after they collect that they could pay the fee. And I agree the superintendent said we could provide the Jumbotron. Mm-hmm. I think that's all as far as district we should have to worry about.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
And I agree with you that people are more frugal when they're spending their own money than when they're spending someone else's. They're a little more careful.
True. Okay.
So the days were the May 31st and June 1st, is that right?
I don't know.
Yes, that's what they have locked in. And they have not heard from Bear River or Logan yet. So, and that's always been a challenge. Just we don't have nearly the challenges they have along the Wasatch Front of trying to schedule facilities. So we're lucky we only have 6 schools.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question, but it's not about graduation. And I don't know if any of you three know the answer to this, but apparently it's been hard for some school districts to get the food they need for their lunches. Are we having a problem with that, or are we doing okay?
I haven't heard that the supply chain is a concern, and Kurt Jenkins made that clear to us. He said, we may not have the variety on our menus this year. The supply chain for everything from food to electronics to cars to is difficult, but I think he's managing, unless Mike's heard different. Yeah, but he did warn us that there are certain foods that he may not be able to get or products that we'll have to do our best, but I haven't heard that it's been a concern.
We signed up with one additional food supplier because we were having some issues with, I'm not sure if it was Cisco or the normal supplier, but outside of that, they've been able to get something.
Who's the new supplier?
I don't remember the name. When I get back to my office, I can tell you. I just remember signing the agreement.
Just a wonder.
Yeah, we still have Chromebooks that we ordered in August that aren't here, so you just can't get electronics. It's not killing us, but it's...
With a chip in it.
Yeah.
It's super slow, but you can see that just going to the grocery store. There's still holes on the shelves.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyone else have something they'd like to report or ask or talk about? Awesome. I know I was supposed to talk about something in my board president report, but I can't remember what it was, and I didn't write it down. So I guess we'll skip that and the superintendent's report, and we will adjourn unless somebody else has something they'd like to say. Thank you all for